Ladies and gentlemen, every generation witnesses moments when the world seems to stand at a crossroads. A single decision, a single move can shift the destiny of nations, redraw maps, and redefine power. Today, we are standing at such a moment in the Middle East. And at the center of it all is Iran, a nation long tested by challenges, yet determined to shape its own path forward. The question before us is not just what Iran will do next, but how its choices could transform the entire region, from the flow of energy to the balance of alliances, from the security of its neighbors to the stability of global markets. What makes this moment so compelling is not only the stakes involved, but the gamble itself, the willingness to risk, to challenge, and to seize opportunity in the face of uncertainty. This is not just a story of politics or strategy, it is a story of timing, of resilience, and of turning limits into possibilities. And if we understand it well, we will see lessons not just for the Middle East, but for every person, every nation, and every leader who has ever faced the question, when the world is changing, will you wait or will you act? The power of timing is one of the most underestimated forces in geopolitics, yet it often makes a difference between success and failure, between a move that reshapes history and one that fades into irrelevance. Iran's current positioning in the Middle East is a vivid example of this principle. For decades, the country has faced sanctions, isolation, and internal pressures, but it has also been waiting and watching as the global order quietly shifts. Today, as Western influence in the region shows signs of decline and new power centers rise, Iran's decisions carry greater weight than ever before. Timing matters because influence is not created in isolation. It emerges when internal ambition aligns with external circumstances. Right now, those circumstances seem unusually aligned for Iran. Global energy markets are undergoing a transformation. The world's dependence on oil and gas remains strong, but the politics of supply and demand are evolving. With traditional producers facing instability and consumer nations seeking alternatives, Iran sees an opening to reassert itself as a key energy supplier. The timing is critical because the gap left by others allows Iran to step in with greater leverage than in the past. Alongside this, Asia's rise is rewriting trade and security networks. China and India's hunger for energy, coupled with their interest in balancing Western dominance, gives Iran new partners who are less interested in ideology and more focused on opportunity. Timing also resonates deeply within Iran itself. Domestic challenges, from economic struggles to political tensions, create pressure to deliver victories that reassure the population and project strength. Acting now, when global attention is divided and alliances are fluid, could allow Iran to convert vulnerabilities into leverage. History shows that nations that sense the rhythm of change and act decisively at the right time are the ones that shape the era, and Iran's leaders appear to believe this is their window. Meanwhile, the United States is recalibrating its role in the Middle East. After 2 decades of costly interventions, Washington appears less committed to micromanaging regional affairs, leaving space for local powers to act more independently. Russia's entrenchment in Syria, China's quiet but steady economic inroads, and Turkey's ambitions further complicate the map. Iran has been watching these shifts unfold patiently, and the moment seems ripe to act. Its leaders understand that bold moves made too early risk isolation, while those made too late lose momentum. The gamble lies in choosing the precise moment to expand influence, to strike new deals, or to test regional rivals. Beyond the realm of military power and political rhetoric, Iran's greatest influence may come from its ability to wield economic leverage as a strategic weapon. For decades, sanctions have restricted the country's access to global markets, banking systems, and trade opportunities, yet this very pressure has forced Iran to sharpen its economic resilience and seek unconventional channels of influence. In the modern world, wars are not only fought with soldiers or missiles, they are fought with pipelines, contracts, and trade corridors. Iran understands that whoever controls the flow of energy and commerce can shape decisions far beyond their borders. The foundation of this leverage lies in energy. Iran possesses some of the world's largest reserves of oil and natural gas, resources that remain essential even in an era of energy diversification. While sanctions have blocked its ability to sell freely, the global hunger for affordable energy ensures that there are always buyers willing to engage, especially among countries looking to reduce their dependence on Western alliance suppliers. The prospect of reintegrating Iran into global energy markets would immediately alter calculations in Europe, Asia, and beyond. Even the possibility of expanded Iranian exports creates a psychological pressure that Tehran can use to its advantage in negotiations and alliances. Beyond hydrocarbons, Iran is positioned at the crossroads of trade. Geographically, it connects Central Asia, the Middle East, and South Asia, giving it the potential to become a critical transit hub. Initiatives like China's Belt and Road see Iran not as an isolated actor, but as a bridge, a necessary passage for goods and infrastructure linking continents. Railways, ports, and corridors through Iranian territory carry not only commerce, but also geopolitical weight, as those who depend on these routes become more invested in maintaining stable relations with Tehran. Iran's economic leverage also extends into partnerships with emerging economies. Countries like China, India, and Russia view Iran as more than just a political ally. They see it as an economic partner, capable of supporting their own strategic goals. Through barter systems, currency swaps, and investment agreements, Iran has managed to keep its economy afloat while simultaneously building networks of dependence that reduce the effectiveness of Western sanctions. This adaptability turns constraints into tools of influence, proving that economic ingenuity can sometimes outweigh brute force. By treating trade and energy as instruments of diplomacy, Iran is redefining power projection in a way that is less visible but no less impactful. This approach allows it to create leverage where traditional military options might be too costly or risky, and it ensures that even nations hostile to its politics cannot ignore the weight of its economic role. The Middle East is no longer shaped by the singular dominance of one external power, and this reality is creating an environment where alliances are shifting in unpredictable ways. For much of the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the United States held unrivaled influence across the region, establishing military bases, forging defense agreements, and acting as the arbiter of disputes. Today, however, that landscape is fracturing. The United States still maintains significant power, but its willingness to expend resources on endless regional entanglements has waned. This retreat, whether gradual or perceived, has left openings for other actors to step in and for regional powers to recalibrate their strategies. Iran sits at the heart of this transformation, aware that the network of alliances forming around it will determine the balance of power for years to come. Russia has already capitalized on these shifts by cementing its role in Syria, ensuring that Tehran has a reliable partner in propping up the Assad regime. China, for its part, approaches the region with economic pragmatism, striking energy deals and investing in infrastructure that tie Middle Eastern countries into its orbit. Both powers provide Iran with alternatives to Western-dominated systems, allowing it to deepen partnerships that would have been less plausible 2 decades ago. This creates a multipolar framework in which Iran is no longer isolated, but part of a wider web of interdependence. At the same time, traditional U.S. partners in the Gulf are reconsidering their options. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and even Turkey are exploring pathways that reduce over-reliance on Washington, engaging in dialogue with Moscow, Beijing, and occasionally even Tehran. The recent thaw between Saudi Arabia and Iran, mediated by China, reflects this recalibration. It demonstrates that the region's most entrenched rivalries can be softened when global power dynamics shift, and it highlights Iran's growing role as a negotiator rather than merely a spoiler. These shifting alliances are not only about governments, they extend to markets and populations. As younger generations across the region demand economic opportunity, stability, and reduced foreign dependency, leaders are under pressure to diversify their partnerships. Iran, despite its challenges, represents a counterbalance to Western prescriptions, and this perception enhances its appeal to those seeking alternative models. The gamble for Tehran lies in navigating these alliances carefully, ensuring that short-term gains do not trap it in long-term commitments that limit its autonomy. The reshaping of alliances is fluid, and Iran's ability to adapt to this evolving environment will be as decisive as its military or economic power. Every bold move in geopolitics carries with it the balance of risk and reward, and Iran's current trajectory exemplifies this delicate gamble. The nation has long sought to expand its influence and break free from the constraints imposed by sanctions and isolation, but doing so requires choices that can either elevate its status or trigger crises that spiral out of control. On one side of the equation lies the potential reward: greater regional leadership, enhanced bargaining power on the global stage, and the ability to reshape narratives that have long painted Iran as a destabilizing force. On the other side lies the ever-present risk: backlash from rivals, economic collapse under renewed pressure, or military confrontation that could set back decades of progress. Navigating this balance is the essence of strategic gambling, where timing, calculation, and nerve determine outcomes. Iran's gamble can be seen in its efforts to project power through proxies and partnerships across the Middle East. By supporting movements in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen, it has managed to extend its reach far beyond its borders, creating leverage points that it can activate in moments of tension. The reward here is influence without direct confrontation, but the risk is that these same entanglements invite countermeasures from adversaries such as Israel, Saudi Arabia, or even the United States. Escalations in these proxy arenas can quickly spiral into conflicts that drain resources and test domestic patience, leaving Iran vulnerable at home. Economic policy is another domain where risk and reward intertwine. Iran's decision to defy sanctions and continue building relationships with emerging powers offers opportunities for revenue, investment, and new markets. Yet this strategy also exposes it to dependency on a narrow set of partners, particularly China and Russia, whose interests may not always align perfectly with Tehran's. The gamble lies in betting that these partnerships will endure and grow stronger without reducing Iran to a junior partner in larger geopolitical games. Domestically, the gamble is even sharper. Iranian leaders face mounting pressures from a young and restless population demanding economic opportunity, political reform, and global integration. Bold foreign policy moves can rally national pride and deflect criticism, but they also run the risk of exacerbating discontent if the rewards are not quickly visible. Each gamble made abroad reverberates within, and failure to manage the consequences could ignite instability at home. In this sense, Iran's leaders are not only wagering on external outcomes, but also on their ability to sustain legitimacy internally, knowing that the margin for error is vanishingly small. Iran's decisions rarely stay confined within its borders, and that is what makes its next move so consequential. Every choice made in Tehran has the potential to trigger a domino effect across the Middle East, setting off chain reactions that ripple through fragile states, volatile alliances, and global markets. The region is interconnected in a way that ensures no action occurs in isolation. When Iran adjusts its strategy, whether through diplomacy, energy policy, or military posture, neighboring countries are compelled to respond, creating a cascade of outcomes that often extend far beyond what was originally intended. One of the clearest examples of this domino effect lies in Iran's influence over Iraq. Political groups, militias, and economic ties give Tehran significant sway in Baghdad, and shifts in its approach can alter Iraq's internal balance almost overnight. A stronger, more assertive Iran could embolden pro-Tehran factions, leading to greater friction with groups aligned with Western or Gulf interests. That tension would not stop in Iraq. It would reverberate into Syria, where Iran's partnership with the Assad regime is central, and into Lebanon, where Hezbollah relies heavily on Tehran's support. In each of these places, Iran's moves serve as the first push in a line of dominoes, with instability or strength cascading through the region. The effect also extends into the Gulf. If Iran escalates its assertiveness, rival states like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates may feel pressured to respond in kind, either by strengthening their military postures or by deepening ties with powers such as the United States and Israel. Conversely, if Iran chooses to lean into diplomacy and reduce hostilities, it could open the door to regional agreements that shift the security framework altogether. Either path sets dominoes in motion, changing calculations for leaders across the Middle East. The global dimension cannot be ignored because Iran is a major player in the energy market. Any disruption in its policies affects global oil and gas flows. A bold Iranian move, such as restricting access through the Strait of Hormuz, would not just send dominoes falling across the region, but would shake financial markets worldwide. The unpredictability of such a step forces major powers in Europe and Asia, to adjust their strategies, often accelerating realignments in alliances and economic priorities. This interconnectedness makes Iran's gamble uniquely powerful. Every policy decision, whether intended as a show of strength or a gesture of compromise, becomes the starting point of a chain reaction. The dominoes may fall toward greater influence and regional stability for Iran or toward escalation and conflict, but either way, the outcome is never confined to Tehran alone. Transformation in history often comes not from the most powerful or the most prepared, but from those who find a way to turn constraints into opportunities. And Iran today embodies that lesson. For decades, the nation has been treated as an outlier in the global system, isolated by sanctions, targeted by international pressure, and constrained by limited access to financial and technological networks. Yet rather than collapsing under these pressures, Iran has demonstrated a capacity to adapt, to innovate under restrictions, and to extract leverage from conditions that were meant to weaken it. This resilience is a lesson not just for the Middle East, but for the wider world. Moments of transformation are born when a player learns to thrive in adversity rather than be defeated by it. Sanctions, for example, were intended to choke Iran's economy, but over time they have forced a shift towards self-reliance in certain industries, from energy development to military technology. This unintended consequence has given Iran tools and capabilities that, while not always matching global standards, provide a level of independence from external suppliers. That independence itself becomes a source of influence as it reduces the vulnerability that other states might exploit. The lesson here is that limits can create new forms of strength, and that transformation often emerges from necessity rather than abundance. Iran's ability to reframe isolation into partnership with non-Western powers also illustrates this point. Where others saw exclusion, Tehran saw an opportunity to align with rising powers such as China and Russia, who were themselves seeking to challenge Western structures. These partnerships, forged in the shadow of restriction, are now contributing to a new global balance where Iran has more room to maneuver than before. The world can see in this an example of how to use constraints not as barriers but as stepping stones to alternative paths. Even domestically, where economic struggles and social unrest create constant pressure, the leadership has often used adversity as a tool to rally nationalist sentiment, framing external challenges as opportunities for unity and resistance. While this approach carries risks, it shows a consistent pattern. Iran has learned to use obstacles as part of its narrative and strategy. The broader lesson is that transformation is not simply about having resources or allies, but about having the ability to turn challenges into catalysts for change. In this sense, Iran demonstrates how unexpected players, through resilience and adaptability, can set in motion changes that alter the trajectory of entire regions. In the end, Iran's strategic gamble is not just about borders, alliances, or oil pipelines. It is about the power of choice at a turning point in history. The Middle East stands on the edge of transformation, where one decision can ignite conflict or unlock cooperation, where one bold step can rewrite the balance of power for generations. This is not only Iran's story, but a reminder to the world. True influence comes when nations, like people, find strength in adversity, see opportunity where others see limits, and dare to move when the timing is right. The future of the region will not be written by the strongest weapons alone, but by those who understand how to turn challenges into possibility.